Good morning, everybody. Mestre Sukuri coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. Mestre Vibes, episode 108. These last couple of weeks have been amazing. Kind of share a funny thing with you. From last Friday till about Monday, I was just literally brain dead. I felt without energy, without a lot of power. And then I realized my wife had said, well, it's because you just finished the books, all these big projects you had to finish before Bachizado. And sometimes I don't reflect on what I just did, always looking forward to the next project. So I realized probably I was a little bit tired, a little bit mentally, but from Tuesday, I am back. I am feeling great. Very special event. On Wednesday, my mentor, my padrinho, my godfather in Capoeira came, Mestre Boa Gente from Bahia. It was a 35-hour trip. He flew from Bahia to São Paulo to New York to Tokyo. And the second he got off the plane, he said, let's do a Hoda for the video. It's kind of his thing. And we played a little bit of Capoeira in Haneda Airport. And it was funny because I've been here so long that I'm used to doing things more of in a socially conscious Japanese way, where I don't want to bother other people. And it always makes me laugh because when people go to other countries, generally, they're very unaware of what's appropriate and inappropriate. But I think because he's 81 years old, that he could get away with it, and it was kind of cute. But generally, I wouldn't recommend, if you come to Japan, they complain a lot about people being obnoxious, especially foreigners. And I understand everything, but it's also important to understand and respect local cultural values. We could have done it in the parking lot, but it had to be with the big sign of Haneda in the back. And it's always going to be fun. And remember, always, when you have a really good relationship with someone, especially one of the older masters, there tends to be a lot of fun for them because it's a world that's so different to them from what they grew up in. And that leads us to today's podcast. Today is going to be about reflection and a lot of the things that are going on in the last couple of days and things that I'm thinking about as I prepare myself mentally for the rest of the event. Today is Friday, September, I want to say 5th, and we still have until the 12th. So I've got a good amount of days before I have to be able to sit down and take a chance to relax a little bit. So let's jump into it. For me, I want to explain in this podcast some of the things that I consider appropriate taking care of the mastery. So when a mastery comes or when a mastery visits, a lot of times they don't speak the language of where they're at. For example, our visitor doesn't speak any Japanese and almost no English. Of course, there are now apps that will translate in Google Translate and everything. But there is a certain level of when you are hosting a mastery, and I'm going to contradict this with what I see happening in Asia a lot. In Brazilian culture, when a master visits, it's like an uncle or a grandfather or a very special big brother. And Brazilians do have a certain level of we call hospitalidade or hospitality. And this type of behavior is super insane. And I get the same type of behavior when I went to Thailand, and Contramestre Cobrinha takes care of me. He took me to this 2-hour Thai massage. We fell asleep. We woke up. We fell asleep. We joked. And it's not about what they take you. It's about building the relationship in what we call intimidade or intimacy. I think that the most important part of vivencia, since this whole workshop and this whole weekend, this whole thing is about vivencia, growing and living together, that it's important to talk about this concept of intimacy in capoeira with your masters, I know because of egos and everything and the way different groups develop, a lot of times people don't have this intimacy with other teachers at the same level. For example, the contramestres might not talk too much to each other unless it's capoeira related. And I know we all have things going on in life, but I'm a very strong believer in maintaining relationships. And I say this because when I was young and I was outside of the United States, up until about 19, well, hold on. I'd say until about when I came to Japan, email was still not something that I personally had a lot of involvement with. When I was living in Korea in 1993, 94, my friends would still send me written letters. It was only towards the end of that that I think, I'm not sure, I'd have to check, but I don't remember using email. We still had pagers. So we're talking about a different way of connecting. And those letters meant so much to me when I'm living abroad that I've always had an understanding of maintaining relationships. And even people around me will say, you're so good at maintaining relationships. It's not that, it's just, I was out and about before you could just email. And like I say a lot of times, because of technology and the internet, we kind of tend to take things for granted and we forget how important personal relationships are. And what I would say, the personal relationship that I developed with the different masters, such as Mestre Boagente, Contra Mestre Cobrinha, all these different things, you have to say something, teach them. I would say the best way to think about this is every time, I know people are going to say this is crazy, but if you're not communicating at least once every 2 weeks, then you're really not on the end of growing together. You could send an email to somebody and just say, hey, hey, things are going good. I just had this big event. It was really nice. Hope things are well. Hey, next time you're in the town, come by and visit me. I know this great restaurant, or I learned this new recipe and I'm going to cook for you. Hey, I found this really nice place to go surfing. I know you like surfing, so let's go. And I realized people don't do that because they don't think about it. This habit no longer exists. I'm not saying that everybody had it before the internet, but I did, and I still maintain doing that. Recently, I saw a really nice interview by, I always forget his name, but he's the professor of happiness and well-being research at Harvard University. And he was talking about how much cell phones and all these different internet are actually regressing us and losing our human contact, right? People take their cell phone to lunch, to dinner. They're at their family when it's time to be communicating and building relationships. And my wife and I have decided more and more that when we're together, when we're eating or when we're doing anything, we're going to do less and less cell phones. Like cell phones are off limits. Why? Because it's our time to be together, and it's too easy to be caught up in that drug that's called a cell phone. So I'm going to do my best that when I'm talking to people, to forget my cell phone, my other things, and focus on the moment and the importance of building human relations. And this is something I'm going to give a couple of stories why I think it's so important. First is when I was traveling at an event in Japan, and I went, and the Brazilian mestre and I, after the event, the Brazilian mestre and the mestre speaks fluent English. He's been living in an English-speaking country for more than 20 years. He's fluent. And we're sitting there, and all the Japanese teachers went to the back to speak to each other. And people might say, well, because they don't speak the language, this and that. But the point of building relationship and building that vivencia, those fundamentals, those fundamentals, is to be with us, communicating with us. Here you have two mestres for whatever reason, and you're not absorbing any capoeira culture. And this is one of the biggest things that I see in Asia. People put the mestre on a pedestal, and then they don't talk, and they just listen, and they're not really listening or communicating. They're just pretending to hear, if that makes any sense. And it could be because of language level, or it could be because of anything else. And I'll see, because I'll see people translating to Japanese from the message. I'm like, that's completely not what he's saying. And they said, oh, they're changing it to Japanese style. Okay, then that's why when I say people say there's Capoeira, is because people are doing that. You cannot say, it took me forever to get contra Mestre Cobrinha to stop saying, but Thai people. But there's like, I don't care about Thai people. I don't care about Japanese people. I don't care about Koreans or Americans. In Capoeira, I care about capoeiristas. I don't bring race into Capoeira. You're either doing it Capoeira style with fundamentos, sabedoria, vivencia, or you're copying and trying to reinvent something that's already there. It kind of reminds me, there was a book when I first came to Japan. I was at the bookstore, and it's this giant book about dreadlocks around the world. And through the book, it talks about all these spiritual reasons and cultural reasons why people have dreadlocks, all the way from like Africa to Vikings and everything. And it was this beautiful book. And when it got to a picture of right in front of Shibuya, in front of the crossing, the scramble corner, whatever they call it, it said Japanese Rastas, dreadlocks. Subtitle means nothing, just fashion, just copying culture. And I thought that was really funny because most people want to always pretend that Japan is perfect. Guys, I'm not putting down Japan. I'm saying don't over glamorize Japan. When you're here for 26 years, you have a very different vision than versus someone who thinks Japan is anime, robots, samurai culture, and that everyone here is incredibly polite. I was speaking, if this culture is so perfect, living in Japan is awesome if you know how to navigate the cultural nuances of the incredibly strict Japanese culture. If you can learn to navigate, like I feel I have, then you can have a really wonderful life. But you have to understand your place in this country, in this society. I think it's probably the same in Korea. I have the same general feeling when it comes to foreign culture and Korean culture. And you need to really understand to not over glamorize any other country. We were talking about, Mestre Boagenci and I were talking about how when sometimes people come from Europe or the United States and they want to act a little bit scandalous when they're in Brazil, like, hey, these different things going on. He's like, look, I don't know. I don't want to be a part of it. What you do in your private time has nothing to do with me. I'm not saying everybody, because people go to Brazil and think it's just, Sodom and Gomorrah. You can do whatever you want. You can hide anything you want. And because you're coming from a first world country, you can come and exploit the people. Yes, I said exploit. People go to third world countries and exploit. And I think that's something that really needs to be talked about more, because people tend to go to Brazil and think they can do whatever they want. And they think you go to Brazil and you're paying money, you're a guest. The Brazilian mestres are showing you off, so you think you're more special than you are. People need to maintain humility. Same thing coming here. Don't over glamorize. And this is something that I think is really interesting. This is more of a question versus a statement. When I meet a lot of Brazilian mestres, I tend to get very friendly, and we talk, and I get to see kind of how they really are. They'll let down their guard a lot more with me for whatever reason. Maybe it's just the way I am. And then I see how they are with people. They want to maintain a pseudo-professional image. For example, I've heard people say, oh, this person doesn't drink. He's so amazing, so spiritual. I'm like, that person and I have been drunk together on several occasions, and he is very foul-mouthed. I'm not saying that that's bad. I like that. That's my style. But don't over glamorize. And I think a lot of the times, a lot of the Brazilians here that I've met, and I've mentioned this before in a podcast, a lot of Brazilians here will have an overstated self-professional image when they meet other Brazilians, so they don't feel like the other Brazilian will put them lower, if that makes any sense. And that happens a lot. Like, I have a lot of friends who are Brazilian, and when we're alone, they're really extroverted, really funny, but when they come together, they don't want to be the ghetto Brazilian, the uneducated Brazilian, the lower class Brazilian. So they tend to have a more professional image. And I kind of find that funny, especially in the arts community, because the whole thing is about building energy and playing off the energy of each other. So I think that's very important. Then I wonder how that affects when we talked about this in Gaijin Sake, how much the Japanese have the ie soto, which is the inside and outside. And I wonder, when both cultures are very superficially image conscious, really how much intimacy do these maestries have, right, with their students in Asia? And I would say, like, this level of intimacy, I've grown a lot, especially with Contra Mestre Cobrinha, Professora Pito, of course, Mestre Linguista. And each relationship's different. But for me, this intimacy is incredibly important with your mestre. You should know the good and the bad of your mestre, so that you can either avoid those mistakes or you can help your mestre grow. I've had students who have pointed out things in my personality or the way I do things that they don't like. And then when I reflect on them, I realize that's wrong and I need to change. And hopefully I've done a good move towards changing and being a better person. Every night I tell myself, please be a better mestre. I know it sounds silly, but I really say that to myself. Please be better, do better, be a good mestre, a good friend, a good husband, a good father, a good community member. These are things that I think about constantly. And maybe it's just the way my brain works, but not in a negative way. I think about how lucky I am and how positive I can add to the world in my own way. The true face of a mestre, the true face of a student. Relationships are very different, and each relationship is complex. But I think that to be a true capoeira relationship, you need to have that intimacy. You need to have that personal knowledge, not collecting information, but that compassion and empathy with those relationships in capoeira. You need to see their true face and be happy to move forward with that. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of times people will get disillusioned. I've seen, this might just be my opinion, but in the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of new study groups in Japan. And what I mean by this, these are people who have no connection to any mestre or group. And a lot of times I see these study groups are people who used to be in other groups. And I think it's because they become disillusioned with the lack of leadership, with the lack of depth and knowledge in capoeira. And they just like, hey, anyone can do anything here in Asia, so let's just do whatever we want. I've seen people who are just doing and teaching, and they just copy from other people. And it's fine. Like I said before, in different things, no, you can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, the people who know. All right, guys, so much things are going on. I'm going to try to get some more stuff. I have a very special surprise. Today, yesterday, I did an hour interview on more personal and more background stuff with Mestre Boagenchi. And I'm going to be video editing, and I'll have that in Japanese and in English for all of you, because here on Patreon, it's not just about my opinion. It's about getting access to information that I've seen was never available unless you put in the time like I have, like fluent Portuguese, studying capoeira. This whole last couple of days, Mestre Boagenchi just freaks out that I know so much about Brazilian samba music, like old songs. He's like, how How do you even know that? We don't even play that in Brazil anymore. And I'm like, well, I study, I learn, I gotta keep going. Studying and copying is different. And that's one of the big things that I should address in the difference in being a capoeirista and just being an aficionado of the sport of capoeira. Okay, guys, thanks for joining me today. If I don't stop, I never will. Let's go. Mestre Sukuri, Mestre Vibes, Tokyo, Japan. Lots of love, lots of peace, lots of capoeira.